The software craftsmanship movement had a manifesto and some very opinionated approaches to software development. I have quite a few regrets about how they went about things, and I would definitely not describe myself as a software craftsman. Having said that, there is actually at least one good idea in software craftsmanship, and it's kind of useful, but I wish they'd focused on that and dropped the rest. Hi, I'm Emily Bache. I'm a software developer and creator of Saman Coaching. Welcome to the Modern Software Engineering channel, where you can find world-class advice on the technical aspects of software engineering, how to build software using modern approaches, and wider commentary on our industry. First, I think we need to understand where software craftsmanship came from, and then what it turned into. So I'm going to go back all the way to the Agile Manifesto. This document was written by 17 industry experts representing a variety of experience, and their goal was to point the software industry in a new direction. It was wildly successful. What they named Agile went from being a fringe concept to mainstream in just a few years. But it didn't work out equally well for all of the authors. Google Trends unfortunately doesn't go quite far back as 2001, when the manifesto came out. But this gives you a picture of the situation from 2004 onwards. I've plotted the popularity of the terms Agile, Scrum, and Extreme Programming. Scrum and Extreme Programming are both specific Agile methods developed and promoted by various authors of the manifesto. I want to draw your attention to the situation in August 2008. Extreme Programming has largely disappeared, but Scrum is gaining momentum, and Agile, although more popular than either, is flatlining. It looks as if Scrum is taking over. It's in this context that Robert C. Martin stepped onto the stage at the Agile 2008 conference in Toronto. He was one of the Agile Manifesto authors, and this was what I think was probably the biggest ever Agile conference, with over 2,000 people in the room. I was there actually. I remember Bob Martin was not happy. He marched around the stage vehemently complaining that Agile was not working out the way he intended. I paraphrase, but he basically said it was being taken over by project managers and dodgy certification schemes. He wanted to revise the manifesto, and he suggested a fifth value: craftsmanship over crap. Even in the speech, he admitted that his fifth value was more an expression of frustration than a serious suggestion. But several other people who were there were inspired to try and fix the problem properly. So after a few discussions, this email on the Software Craftsmanship Google group, which is what they had before we had Discord, in March 2009, they announced a new manifesto, and they invited people to come and endorse the idea by signing it. The Manifesto for Software Craftsmanship builds on top of the Agile Manifesto. It copies the overall format and the language, but adds this oldie-worldy, parchmenty kind of feel. For each of the original 4 statements in the Agile Manifesto, it adds a new requirement. Not only working software, but also well-crafted software. It goes on in the same way for the other 3. The authors are again trying to point the industry in a new direction. And this turned into a rallying call that proved pretty popular. To date, over 35,000 people have signed this manifesto, and there have also been conferences and meetups and articles and books. One of the main proponents of software craftsmanship, Sandro Mancuso, wrote this very influential book explaining in detail what it's all about. This is a quote from the book. Software craftsmanship is a long journey to mastery. It's all about putting responsibility, professionalism, pragmatism, and pride back into software development. I think that sounds quite attractive, but honestly, I can't recommend much of the rest of the book. Although it does contain what I think is the most important idea in software craftsmanship. I'll explain that in a moment. But first, there is one issue that this movement got wrong right from the start, and we really need to fix it: the language. As a native English speaker and a woman, I find craftsmanship, and particularly craftsman, archaic. It is inherently gendered in a way that we just don't tolerate for modern roles. The Craftsmanship Manifesto begins with the phrase, "as aspiring craftsmen." I cannot sign this. We do not have policemen today, we have police officers. Stewardesses are cabin crew or flight attendants. I could go on. I mean, for goodness sake, even bin men have turned into waste removal operatives. We've got to keep it a bit classier than this. I am not a craftsman or even a craftswoman. Craftsperson? I am a software developer. I'm an engineer. I'm a programmer. Glad we cleared that up. I'm actually quite encouraged today that almost nobody is talking about software craftsmanship or craftsmen anymore. Well, not anyone who matters, at least. We instead talk about software craft, software crafters. And we're partly managing to reinvent what that means and drop some of these other archaic connotations, like this whole idea of medieval guilds with apprentices and journeymen as a substitute for actual education. But the biggest idea from software craftsmanship that I hope has died a death is the idea of the prima donna, master craftsman. Sandro Mancuso says in his book, "It is our job to say no to our clients when they ask us for something we know is not going to work or that is not going to be done by a certain deadline." So software craftsmanship is about outright refusing to do things for our clients. As Daniel Turhurst North eloquently put it, software craftsmanship risks putting the software at the centre rather than the benefits that the software is supposed to deliver, mostly because we are romantics with big egos. Yeah, romantics with big egos is a polite way of putting it. Software developers can't afford to be precious and refuse to collaborate. We are part of the business, and everyone benefits if we understand our users' and customers' needs and don't become so self-important that we stop listening. Okay, so I have just dissed most of the big ideas in software craftsmanship, but I did promise you that there is actually still one thing that is totally on point even today: code quality. Now, this graph was sketched by Sandro Mancuso in his book that I failed to recommend, but this is still important. Agility is all about the ability to respond to change, and what this graph says that is if your code quality is high, you can add features quickly, more quickly than if your code quality is lower. In other words, it's really hard to have agility without high code quality. When this graph was first proposed, it was anecdote. But today, we actually have empirical evidence for this. This research paper from Adam Thornhill and Marcus Borg quantifies exactly how much code quality contributes to time in development. In their study, examining production code from real companies, they found people working in unhealthy code took more than twice as long to resolve a JIRA issue than people working in healthy code. So that's the same graph that Mancuso had in his book, just drawn a little differently. Better code means faster feature delivery. But there's more. It's not only that features take longer, they found the variability was much larger too. In this study, some tickets could take 9 times longer if the code was unhealthy. And that could make predicting when your feature will be done really hard. So poor code quality not only slows down development, it also leads to much more unpredictable schedules. I would like to thank our channel sponsors who support us so that we can carry on making all these videos for you. Our sponsors are Equal Experts, Transfic, Tuple, and these are not just kind of random companies. They all have products and services that are very well aligned with the kinds of topics we talk about here on this channel. So please do take a moment, follow their links in the video description. Those studies are using a particular measure of code quality they call code health. But at its heart, it's the kind of code you get when you've got skilled developers who do good work and are motivated to continually improve the design and the tests. Code that's easy to understand and change safely. Now, if you remember, extreme programming, or XP, was one of the very early agile methods that didn't get quite as popular as some of the others. XP promotes several engineering practices that lead to higher code quality, like refactoring, but also pair programming and testing and simple design. Other agile methods are less prescriptive about the technical practices, and that is what largely caused Robert C. Martin to give that speech in 2008 and initiate the whole software craft movement. Today, we're in a slightly different context, and those XP practices alone aren't really enough. We've got things like DevOps and hexagonal architecture and continuous delivery and domain-driven design and all these other really good ideas that have come up in modern software engineering. But at the heart of it all, code quality is still essential. We need skilled, motivated developers who understand the needs of the business and can use AI tools wisely. This is the heart of software craft. Let's just drop the rest of all that software craftsmanship archaic nonsense. Code quality for the win. Happy coding.